We are so pleased and grateful that Dr. Tim Beatley will be joining us today as our keynote speaker. Tim is the Teresa Hines Professor of Sustainable Communities at the University of Virginia School of Architecture. He is also the originator of the term green urbanism. Tim is the founder and executive director of the Biophilic Cities Project. And if you are not familiar with that, I'm sure Tim will be speaking about it, but you can also, as the slide shows, go to biophilic.cities.org to learn more about it. Tim is the author of numerous books, many research articles, and most pertinent to today's symposium, Biophilic Cities, Integrating Nature into Urban Design and Planning. Tim's work concerns sustainable living and practices, creative strategies to build green communities, and living practices that reduce humanity's ecological footprint and increase equitability. I've known Tim for a number of years, know that he is both a great presenter and an absolute fount of knowledge. He will be speaking today on Toward a Biophilic Campus, Lessons from the Biophilic Cities Movement. Tim, the forum is yours.
Hey, thank you, Don and Dorothy. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yay. All right, I was all ready to sort of plug in my headphones, but I'm gonna actually go ahead and share my screen and get going. And apologies for where is it? Apologies for the many slides that I'm afraid I have. And so hopefully you can see that now, and I'll put it in presentation mode. Okay, can you see that?
We can
The
see
screen?
it. Thank you, Tim.
Very good. Fantastic. So I've got just half an hour, and I have too many slides. I thought, Don, that I made a Herculean effort to reduce my slides, and then I added a lot of them back in this morning. So it is much longer than the half an hour. But Donna or Dorothy, I'm hoping that you can give me like a 5-minute warning. And then at that point, we'll sort of transition to I'll flip through the rest of the slides and maybe just give you a sense of the visual elements of what I wanted to talk about. But it's a pleasure to be with you. This network is wonderful and its growth is remarkable. And we have been around a little bit longer and have not been have not grown as much as you have. And I'm just impressed with all the things that you're doing and all the things you are doing at campuses around the country. So I wanted to first talk a little bit about biophilic cities. And Don just gave a plug for our webpage. Please do look at that, biophilic.cities.org. We have about 35 cities around the world that are part of the network, but also several thousand individual members and several hundred organizations. We date back to around 2013. It kind of grew out of a research project where we're looking around the world trying to see which cities were doing the most and doing the most innovative work to incorporate nature. So there's a lot of information on the web page. There is a curated page for each of our partner cities. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those partner cities. I'm also going to make reference to films. One of the things we've been doing a lot lately is making a relatively short films that tell stories about these cities, 5 to 10, 12-minute films. And you're probably going to get tired of me mentioning films. So we start with this concept of biophilia. Here is one of Ed Wilson's definitions, E.O. Wilson. He wasn't the first person to use the term biophilia, but he's really the one who coined it in the way that we think of it. This idea that we have co-evolved with nature, that we're carrying with us our ancient brains, and that to be truly happy, healthy, and to lead meaningful lives, we have to have nature all around it. We're hardwired, in essence, to need and want that connection to nature. And so in the Biophilic Cities network, we argue that nature has to be designed, has to be all around us where we spend most of our time, where we live and work. It can't just be something that we get occasionally on a summer vacation. So for a lot of us, that means these kinds of things. And I know this is not new to this group, but I think about what gives me pleasure and delight and what I am drawn to. They are things, they are living things like birds and butterflies and trees and flowers and water. And we have a remarkable amount of evidence about how these things positively impact us. And so we have this vision of a new kind of city where we're immersed in nature and we have this nature all around us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about birds if I get far enough into the slides. I am a lifelong bird lover, been thinking and writing a lot about the idea of a bird-friendly city. We have a lot of evidence, right, that we listen to bird song, our stress hormone levels go down, we're happier, our mood improves, our cognitive performance is enhanced. That is true for almost all of the things that I will talk about. So I don't need to convince this group. All the things on the right of this end of this slide are things where we have considerable evidence. And coming out of environmental psychology, even the idea that if in the presence of nature, you're more likely to be generous, you're more likely to be cooperative, more likely to be interested in thinking longer term. It's a pretty good case to make, I think, that we are better human beings in the presence of nature. So we need to be designing cities and human spaces with lots of nature, of course. I'm often using the word flourishing because that to me captures a lot of the essence of what we're talking about. It's not just pleasure and delight and benefits, but it's this deeper connection to place and nature and to each other and to what it means to live a meaningful life. In our network, we're often using this thing we call the nature pyramid. It is kind of based on the food pyramid that the USDA used to use a lot in describing and helping guide our food choices, our food diets. We think that there is a minimum dose of nature that you need every day or every hour even. And the pyramid is sort of one way of understanding that. The things at the top of that pyramid might be far away, immersive nature experiences. We can't afford the carbon footprint for all of us to build our nature diets from things at the top of that pyramid. So we're arguing that it's the things at the bottom, at the base, like that food pyramid. These are the things where the bird song, the connection to trees and nature and greenery and all those things that we're going to hopefully find around us where we live and work. So our cities actually have been using this pyramid as a kind of diagnostic tool, which is pretty interesting. So cities like Phoenix, for example, recognize they've got really wonderful larger desert parks that you might visit on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but what they're lacking is often the nature at that sort of neighborhood level. So the pyramid has actually found its way around the world. This is just an example of that. Last spring, we were asked about using the pyramid or our giving permission to have the pyramid used for a national daily dose of nature campaign in Belgium. It was really quite interesting, and we collaborated with them. It turns out in Belgium, they have the food pyramid as well, but they've turned it upside down, and it's really a food triangle. So our nature pyramid ended up being a kind of nature triangle, but with, again, a lot of power behind it. This is the Dutch version, by the way. There's a French version. Your Dutch is probably not very good. Things on the right are suggested amounts of nature by day, week, month, and year. So I did want to tell you a little bit about what our cities are up to. So this concept of biophilic cities is very much about cities that invest in nature, that have lots of nature, that are very natureful. They're places that emphasize or facilitate connections to the nature around them. They're also places that make room for many non-human species. We know we're in the midst of a global biodiversity crisis. Cities can't be the only answer, but they can be a significant part of the answer. We believe that that cities need to be designed and managed in ways that make room for lots of non-human life. The idea of coexistence, for instance, I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Positive trends in the direction of biophilic cities and biophilic design. This is images of a wonderful cancer center, hospital cancer center in Toronto. We've gotten to know Ty Farrow, the architect here. A lot of interest in the architectural world around this idea of biophilic design, incorporating nature into every aspect of building design. Of course, we're thinking about nature in the larger scale and thinking about citywide nature, and this notion of having interconnected nature throughout the city, what we're often calling a whole of city approach. So room or rooftop to region and bioregion and all of those scales in between. And the idea that that green roof on that building might connect, in fact, to upper level canopy that connect to ground level parks. We want to be immersed again in that nature. Singapore, one of our partner cities from the very beginning, probably the city that's pushed this idea the furthest in our mind. For many, many years, they called themselves a garden city. More recently, they now describe themselves as a city in a garden, which seems like a small change, but is really quite profound. And more recently, a city in nature, and sometimes a biophilic city in nature, which would seem to be redundant. But this idea that we move from seeing a city as a place where there are moments of nature, places of nature, that park that you have to walk to really seeing the city as the park, as the forest, as the natural system, which of course it is. And city states like Singapore actually adopting a number of planning policies to put this idea into practice. So this building, for example, illustrates something called the landscape replacement policy. So every new building in Singapore has to replace at least the nature lost at ground level from the footprint of the building in the form of vertical nature. So in Singapore, they've innovated around sky parks and green rooftops and green vertical gardens and those sorts of things. So if I have to summarize what this vision of biophilic cities is about, it's immersive nature, integrated, continuous, and seamless. It's obviously integrating built and natural systems together. And parks are important, but we're thinking increasingly about things, nature beyond parks. It's whole of city, again, it's also whole of life. So every city should provide opportunities for kids and children at an early age to experience nature. The lower right image is actually a screenshot from a film about a charter school film we made in near Atlanta, where the kids go to a school. It's not one building, but a series of buildings, and it's designed to facilitate movement. The kids come every day with their coats and their boots, and they take their assignments out into the forest. But it's also biodiversity, it's also wildness, it's also a culture of biophilia. So we're interested in cities that don't just have more nature, but a citizenry that cares about that nature, that can recognize common species of flora and fauna, that actually devote their time and energy to conserving and restoring the nature in that city. And then, as mentioned, I think by Don, I mean we have, especially in American cities, this challenge of dealing with longstanding spatial segregation and redlining, which means that actually the nature is not evenly or fairly distributed across a city. Tree canopy is lower. Access to parks will be lower, especially in neighborhoods of color. So a lot of our cities are attempting to tackle that. We sometimes say just biophilia. So that's the summary. Here are just a few samples of what our cities are doing. Obviously, from city to city, different parts of the country or the world have different circumstances, different ecologies. What you can do is different. And so there's some wonderful, unique things that cities are doing to restore and emphasize the nature. Our network, if you go to the webpage, you'll find a lot of films. And this is just an example of a recent film about the Atlanta Coyote Project in Atlanta, really, really wonderful. These are relatively low budget films, but they might be useful for a lot of the work that you all are doing. So it's often a cameraman and me, and we often are interviewing somebody along a trail, as you see here, and just happened to be that some dog walkers arrived, and we're often sort of interviewing people on the spot. So just a handful of additional slides. I mentioned wildness. Here's some images from Vitoria-Gasteiz, and the capital of the Basque Country in Spain. They brought a river, brought it back to the surface from being underground in a pipe, This idea of wilding cities or rewilding cities is a big part of what our network is doing. We often say that biophilic cities are regenerative cities. This is a wonderful story from our partner city, Wellington, New Zealand, where they've erected a predator-proof fence around a wild area in the middle of the city as a way of propagating or allowing the native birds to rebound. It's been quite successful. So again, this idea of seeing the city as shared spaces, shared habitat, the idea of coexistence. This is a well-known story now from our partner city, Austin, Texas. 1.5 million Mexican free-tailed bats that come every summer occupy the space under the bridge, main bridge in downtown Austin. Hundreds of people come out every night to watch the bats emerge. My last example, before I talk a little bit more about campus nature, it's from Edmonton, Canada, another coexistence story, but a story of a city that is emphasizing ecological connectivity and all of its planning, applying the idea of circuit theory, looking for disconnects as a bird might move through this city. And a really wonderful story. One of the few cities actually that now building wildlife passages. So anything that any neighborhood or road that gets built now has to incorporate a wildlife passage. And interestingly enough, one of the things they're finding is this sharp reduction in car wildlife collisions. So the next thing I'd just like to mention is just to make a little bit of the case that a college campus is very much like a city. And I'm often saying that to my students who arrive here and who in their first year are living in a dorm, and they're riding the bus, and they're walking in ways they didn't do before, and they're experiencing nature, trees and nature, and they're eating together in dining halls. To me, this is wonderful. These are wonderful experiences that in some ways, we're teaching kids to value a lot of things that maybe they hadn't thought of before, and to think about things about how to live in a new and different way. So I've kind of take that to carry that through into my classes. And I teach an introduction to urban planning course. I'm an urban planner. And it is true that the campus becomes a wonderful way, in fact, to teach about concepts of planning. So here is an example, Kevin Lynch's very famous 1960 book, The Image of the City. He describes the imageability of a city, the ability to understand the spatial qualities of a city by looking at these 5 physical elements: paths, edges, districts, nodes, and landmarks. I challenge my students to see the UVA campus in terms of this framework, and they find it very helpful. Many of our cities in the network have developed elaborate networks for moving around, trail systems. This is Wellington, back to Wellington, the idea of being able to walk from downtown Wellington into the hills, into the mountains, finding nature easily along a trail, high degree of pedestrian connectivity. Or Pittsburgh, our partner city, where they have this remarkable remnant network of 850 city steps, sets of city steps. Best way of getting around the city is that way. And that's the best way to discover nature. So I'm frequently talking about how pathways and streets can be opportunities to reimagine contact with nature. I do need to say biophilic infrastructure. It's a big thing in my world in the urban context. And here are some examples of green streets, for instance, in Portland, Oregon on the left, and Sydney, Australia on the upper right. The idea that you can reconfigure infrastructure like a street so that it retains, it collects stormwater, it helps you do things that conventional engineered infrastructure does, but it also helps to restore the environment, restore the ecology, provide nature in neighborhoods where it is especially needed. I do think that every campus needs to think about the spaces in terms of placemaking. What are the ways how do we know where we want to go? And to develop a sort of place-making sensibility. We have a cemetery you see in the middle. It's not a place here at UVA that students or faculty or staff understand as a place to visit. Really, it's just there. Singapore, upper right, very famous bridge that's become this pedestrian pathway and mecca, and a really wonderful place to explore nature. Busan, South Korea, another of our partner cities, has as part of their citizens park, is a place where you take your shoes off and touch the sand and the ground and walk barefoot. And so there's a lot we can learn actually from the urban spaces and urban parks literature. So on the lower left is Bryant Park, which we're often talking about in urban planning. How do you create spaces that we sometimes call sticky, spaces that you want to go to and then you hang out? They're so wonderful, make you feel so wonderful that you want to see there. You want to see people, you want to hang out there. In Bryant Park, the most famous thing, of course, are the movable folding French bistro chairs. This idea of movable chairs is something that we need to be doing more of in campus planning. I want to recommend a document, if you don't know about it, the 14 Patterns of Biophilic Design. I don't have time in this to go through all of these biophilic elements. There's now a 15th one in the form of awe. I highly recommend it. Bill Browning has written this. There's now a 10th anniversary edition. And you'll see the kind of major categories: nature in the space, nature analogs, nature of the space. So in the biophilic cities and biophilic design framework, it's not just the presence of actual nature, but it's also analogs, it's shapes and forms that connect connect us to nature. And it's also things like mystery and risk and peril and prospect and refuge, which I can talk about. So these images on the right are give us a sense of what a park could be, what the lessons of an urban park might give us for spaces on a campus. This is the Dorothea Dix Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, one of our partner cities, and it's really interesting. You can go on a forest bathing expedition. You can walk through, on the far right there, Pine Forest Trail, Pine Loop Trail, or you can go visit certain times of the year they have fields of sunflowers. But the newest thing is this Gibson Play Plaza, which is this essentially an adventure park. And we're making a short film about it, and we've done a lot of filming there. And one of the things that it was a little bit surprising was the kids get to touch the water and move things around and operate pumps that move water,
Mm.
and that's what we need for kids. But what was most interesting is that the adults are doing these things as much as the kids. So is play something we need to be thinking about in a campus nature context? I think it is. So we have some wonderful nature spaces and places here on grounds. One of the new ones is the Arboretum and Botanical Gardens behind the Darden Graduate School of Business. Really wonderful story. Happy to tell you more about this later. Biophilic elements and the buildings that connect to the outside. There's a formal, kind of more formal garden and botanical gardens that transitions into a native forest and also connects to our Rivanna Trail. So you can actually get to and from this space through our trail systems, the 20-mile trail that circles the city of Charlottesville. I'm
Mm.
posing here the question, how does a forest like this change a business school? I think that it does. I mean, there are these ideas around psychological priming that if we see trees, we see nature around us, maybe those things will become more important or more present in the teaching of business. And we certainly need business and companies to be thinking about nature and nature conservation. For me, making this network of spaces interesting is really important, and layering interest. These are things we're trying to do in our tiny forest. You want to go visit that tiny forest, but you also maybe want to find the gargoyle, or maybe you want to go visit the poetry dispenser, a poetry box on the right, which is actually just exists in a portion of our Dell forest. And I just was reading this morning about these giant trolls that Danish artist Thomas Dambo has been commissioned to install. This particular one, called Big Pete with the Big Feet, in a space in Charlotte, North Carolina, just from this morning's news. I want to go see Big Pete with the Big Feet, and I want to go find that troll. And so that's partly how I think we're going to get everybody interested in experiencing nature around the campus. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we unveiled our own attempt to sort of do this through what we were calling the Tim's Tree Challenge. Yes, this is me, Tim. These are Tim's 10 trees, and the challenge was to go and find all 10 trees I don't own these trees. These are on campus. They're just 10 of my favorite trees. So there's a story map. If you'd like to see it, the QR code should work from your phone right now. So go ahead and try that. It'll take you to the story map, and you see on the right these relatively inconspicuous little signs that my students have developed in front of each of these trees. We haven't quite figured out what you get if you visit all 10 trees, but we're sending you off on an adventure, and hopefully you will have experiences of wonder and awe. But I have a longstanding critique of maps and the way we visually depict the space and at universities and colleges. And they're not, we need wonder maps, I believe. The maps we typically have, like the ones you see on the left, may help us get around in a very sort of utilitarian way. We need to find that building because our class is in it or we have a meeting or something. But I want the wonder map. I want the map that's going to tell you about that big troll or that 300-year-old oak tree that you need to see and touch. And I think we need I'd love any examples that you all have from your own campuses. So what else? We need to design every building so that it's biophilic. Those 14 patterns of biophilic design, 15 patterns now, are very helpful in that respect. We have a new film about this wonderful building in Singapore, a mixed use project. Most prominent feature is this tiered roof you see on the top, 600 trees on the roof of this building. If you're a bird flying over it and looking down, you'd think it was a tropical forest. We need more buildings like that. We have a film about this building, actually Phipps Conservatory Center for Sustainable Landscapes. You see the green roof here. This is a public green roof, operable windows that bring natural breezes. Nobody's workspace is more than a few feet away from a window. Lots of natural daylight, lots of biophilic art, just wonderful. We have to also bring as much nature inside as we can. I want to activate, I want to get people outside, but we recognize that we are going to be inside. So these are two images from our symposium last week, our Center for Sustainable, or for Forest Urbanism rather, and just creating a little mini forest at the speaker podium changes the whole flavor of the room. So I am advocating for spaces like the one you see up. This is my office. I've created a little forest. I'm also raising a lot of oak trees, seedlings from our major white oak outside through the use of acorn vases. And then in a number of my classes, I regularly give away plants. But I think it behooves the university, every college, to invest in subsidizing plants for students especially. But we do want to get you outside. So we've gotten to know this organization, Nature Desks. They run this International Outdoor Office Day every year. How do we get you outside? We know from this period, post-pandemic period, for good reason, people don't want to go back to their cubicles. They don't want to go back to working in that sterile office space. So it is a challenge. How do we do it? Well, here at UVA, here in my building, we've created interstitial spaces on the edge of the building that are covered and where you can hold class actually even when it's raining. Giving faculty members permission to take their classes out into the forest. I taught a 4-day workshop in September. We met every day for 3 hours in the spot you see on the right. Nobody encourages faculty to do that or even tells them that that is possible. You really just have to do that yourself. All of my office
Tim,
hours,
sorry to interrupt. We
is
have
it
five
time?
minutes
5 minutes? Or am I done? How many
5 minutes.
minutes, Don? Do I have any 2-minute reprieve or
Oh,
one
no,
minute?
you have 5 more minutes.
Oh, I have 5 minutes. All right, great.
Yes.
I'm going to go even faster. So I held all my office hours under our grand white oak tree, and a few years ago, one of my students coined said we should call it tree hours, and that sort of stuck. We need to kind of challenge faculty to spend more of their time with students outside and out in nature, and we have a few faculty that do walking office hours, and I've done that for a few years too. During the pandemic, we actually gave every student in our planning department their own camp chair. And we actually produced them with the logo, planning department logo on the back. And so they become these sort of beloved objects that connect them to their time at UVA. So, wow, I wanted to tell you a little bit about birds and trees. And so I'm going to go very quickly. I do believe more non-human life on campuses is important. This is a film we've just made about beavers and cities. Beavers are these amazing natural engineers. We need to make room for beavers on campuses. In Seattle, these images are from Seattle. There's a neighborhood where the residents all time the walking of their dogs so they can watch the beavers. Beavers are really important. We need therapy beavers on campuses. I'm a big fan of goats and sheep. We have a huge challenge here at UVA in controlling invasive plants like the porcelain berry you see up there. And the UVA has been using goats. There's a company called Goat Busters here in town. They'll bring 50 goats and they will eat for 2 or 3 days. But I think we need to have our own herd of goats and maybe sheep as well. I've challenged my students to think about sheeps on our lawn, our famous lawn here in the center of Central Campus. So birds are very important to me. I do a lot of work around birds and bird-friendly cities. Bird song is really an important biophilic quality. I think that we ought to judge the success of a campus by whether people can hear, students, faculty, staff can hear abundant native bird song wherever they are. This is one metric for a good city. This is one of my favorite birds, eastern wood thrush. We have a huge problem with mortality, though, and I do believe we have a moral duty to minimize harm to birds. This is my hand holding dead birds. I've been here multiple decades. Unfortunately, I have lots of pictures like that. We know birds don't see glass as a barrier. What they see is a reflected cloud or reflected trees. Many of our cities, to their credit, are adopting mandatory bird safe design standards that require bird safe glass. Fritted glass, for example, with a density pattern 2 inches by 2 inches is often what the gold standard requires. That is a kind of window that birds can see. We're doing some of that at UVA, and we're retrofitting. This is our cafe in our School of Architecture on the left. We retrofitted that cafe, the cafe windows, with a product called Feather Friendly, where the dots are 2 inches by 2 inches or 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. We've had a bird student group actually do this wonderful mural that we know we can paint, we can create art at the same time that we make those windows visible. Some of our new buildings are incorporating bird safe glass. Guardian makes a UV bird safe window that's quite effective. Lots of other things, including very low cost paracord systems that we can do ourselves. So I want to say more awe on campus. We know there's a lot of emerging evidence about the power of awe and the importance in our lives of awe, this sense, this feeling of vastness that we get from nature. Here's a Rich Louv quote. Don, I'm hoping that we can share the slides later and folks can more casually read some of the quotes and look at them. I do a lot of
Absolutely.
awe walks, and this is one from last spring, where at the very end a red fox kind of walked right in front of us. We kind of oohed and awed and walking with a certain new perspective on the nature and being challenged to see it in a different way. A lot of tools that we're using in my classes, we're doing a lot of iNaturalist observations. The whole idea of a BioBlitz on campus is not particularly new. I do believe there's a wonderful show every day, the sky, this effortless looking that we get from seeing both the night sky, but also the clouds and sky activity. Manhattan Hinge in New York City, where at certain times of the year the setting sun lines up just right, so it lines up with the street grid. Hundreds of people that come to watch it. So I think we should be doing more of these things on campus. We're making a film about the Davy Poplar at UNC Chapel Hill. I don't know if we have anybody from Chapel Hill here. Wonderful story of thousands of chimney swifts that roost every night in this massive cavity in this tree. And again, many students and faculty and staff coming to watch these birds as they swirl and as the night falls, they kind of fall into this cavity. It's really, really a remarkable feat of nature. So the last thing is about trees, and I'll just quickly go. I do think we need old growth forests where we can. Joan Malouf was on campus last fall. She runs something
Mhm.
called the Old Growth Forest Network. We need old growth forests. We also have many opportunities to plant tiny forests. And so that's another story that is its own story here at UVA. These are images from a film we made about the Netherlands, where they've planted 200 of these tiny forests. They're Miyawaki forests. This planting method where we plant the trees very close together, they self-compete, they grow very quickly. And so this has been a student initiative, wonderful student initiative. And I promised Don I'm going to stop after this, that here's another QR code that you could look at. But we have now 6 of these forest patches, these sort of quasi-Miyawaki forests. Each planting has involved something like 100 students. So there is a story map, and there is a map of the 6 locations, and you see as well on the right that the students actually mapped and remeasured the 100 largest trees on the forest or on the campus on the grounds. So our 6th patch was an edible patch, and it was quite an interesting feat to try to get that approved. And it's right in the middle of central grounds. There was a lot of worry about what it would look like. I had a student, a landscape architecture student working for me, and she generated a wonderful rendering, which you see here, which helped in discussions with admissions office and other folks who are in these offices around central grounds. They saw what the potential of this edible garden could be. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead and go to the last slide. We're starting to name our trees here. We're drawing our trees, paying more attention to our trees. There are actually a number of cities now that are giving trees their own individual email addresses. This whole idea of texting a tree is quite interesting as well. And that's it. And thanks so much. And I'd love to hear from any of you all about the things that you are doing that might fit into some of the things I'm talking about, and I can add them to the next slideshow.
Well,
So
Tim,
thanks very
thank
much.
you so much for truly an inspiring, engaging, and thought-provoking presentation. You are doing such remarkable things at UVA, and you are truly one of our campus Nature RX heroes. So thank
Thank you.
you.
That's nice. Thanks. Thanks for having me.